Hello and welcome to another YouTube vlog from Catholic Concern for Animals. And today it's myself and Chris Fegan, our Chief Executive, and we'll be discussing what's been happening with CCA and what plans there are for the future and how CCA is standing and how it is intending to progress over the next year. So first off, Chris, we've 2 weeks ago we had a fish and marine welfare conference, a first for Catholic Concern for Animals. How do you think that went?
I was very pleased with it, Gerald. I was very pleased with it for a number of reasons, and not just for one particular reason. Firstly, we had a lot of interest ahead of the event. We had over 100 people registering to attend, and many of us who said they'd like to watch the recordings if possible. They couldn't attend on the day, this sort of thing. So there was quite a substantial amount of interest before the day itself. And we had, I think, around about 50 odd people attending on the day, which I understand is quite a reasonable turnout compared to the 100 plus registrations. To get sort of half the people who registered attending apparently is quite a good thing for these modern virtual conferences. So I was very pleased with it. It obviously was a concern because it was the first time, like many organisations indeed, had done virtual things this year because of the pandemic. The conference originally was going to be a traditional type of event at Roehampton University last summer, but because of the pandemic, of course, that had to be changed to a virtual event. So bearing in mind it was our first ever virtual event of this size, I'm delighted.
And one of the benefits of that, of course, is that we really had an international audience, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I mean, we're hoping to have international guests and delegates coming, but clearly the logistics of that, normally when you have people have to get planes and visas and accommodation, it's a lot simpler for them to be just sitting at home or in their office, just clicking on their Zoom link. So clearly that is an easier way of doing things. Obviously, the downside of it is that you don't meet people in person and have that traditional conference interaction where people meet over coffee and lunch and chit chat around the conference. So clearly, that was missing, which is unfortunate, but everybody else has had that position for the last year or so. But yes, we had people from Africa, the United States, obviously Europe, and I think we might have had somebody from Asia, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But certainly we had numerous people from Africa, the US, and obviously Europe. So very pleasing.
And not just one, but I would say two important contributions from Catholic Church positions. We had the Bishop for the Environment and the statement by Cardinal Turkson.
Well, clearly, yes. I mean, for us, as Catholic Concern for Animals, it's very important that we have Catholic senior clergy involved in our work, and they are. You mentioned the contributions there. Bishop John Arnold opened and welcomed delegates or attendees to the conference, and we work with Bishop John and have done very regularly for a number of years. Been a very strong supporter of CCA, and we're very grateful for the help that Bishop John gives us. But also we had, as you say, the Vatican, and we had a written statement from Cardinal Turkson, who, as we know, is a very senior cardinal within the Vatican. And then we had Dr. Tabaldo, who read the statement out on behalf of Cardinal Turkson, then doing a 30 or even 40-minute, I think, question and answer session, which I think was very, very well received by people. I suspect not many people often get the chance to quiz the Vatican on such matters, or indeed on any matter. So to have the opportunity for people to directly question a senior representative from the Vatican on these matters was greatly appreciated by not only Catholic Concern for Animals, but the people who attended.
And that engagement between the Catholic Church and the wider animal advocacy area was I thought really strong. We had on the one hand the statement from the Cardinal, and then we had speakers from various different Christian and non-Christian animal advocacy groups, which were really kind of bringing the message out, as it were.
Oh, absolutely, and this is central to what we do in Catholic Concern for Animals, and I repeatedly and even monotonously, indeed, go on about the importance of faith groups such as ourselves in the animal advocacy world, and therefore, most of my colleagues in animal advocacy, whether it's in Europe or elsewhere, are non-faith based. I'm not saying that individuals don't have faith, of course they do, but the organizations, for example, whether it's the RSPCA or Compassion in World Farming or the Humane Society of the United States, I could go on and list many. They're obviously very important animal advocacy partners and colleagues of ours, but we bring this extra faith dimension, and for us to bring the Vatican and the UK Bishops' Conference to the table for people to talk to them and engage with them is something I think they appreciate, and something they don't often have the opportunity to do.
Absolutely. Given that, are we likely to see more of this in the future from CCA?
Oh, absolutely. I think, well, let me say absolutely. Let me now go back a bit from that. Clearly, I think the pandemic has altered organizations and, of course, individuals' behavior. There's no way of denying that. How long that behavior will last, and whether we return to the old normal or the new normal we keep hearing about, is obviously a thing for the future. I suspect there'll be no going back to what was the old normal, but the new normal won't be a completely revolution thing. It'll be some sort of mix and match. So we will be continuing our digital output, which has been increased dramatically in the last nearly a year now. I think the UK has been locked down for about 11 months in effect, on and off now. So we've increased our digital output, and we will be continuing that. We'll be doing YouTube events like this, YouTube interviews with various people, but also we'll be doing various webinars, I think, during the year on selected topics, whether that is continuing with our fish work, which we will be doing, our fish project, whether it'll be something based on COP26, whether it'll be based on anything else, any other advocacy work. But we will be doing increasing webinars. Whether we'll put a full-fledged conference on again in 2021, I think is less sure. I think we may just be doing webinars, an hour here, an hour there, but regular ones every month or two. That's the plan, to be doing lots of digital things. And of course, they do have the benefit of people who cannot attend at that particular moment in time of watching them again by the magic of technology.
As you mentioned, the conference was part of the fish work, the fish focus that we've had with CCA now for some time, and in a very difficult time with respect to the restrictions that the pandemic has put on all organisations. How do you think it's gone so far, and what can you see for the future?
In regards to Fish Project?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the Fish Project has been impacted by the pandemic. There's no way of denying that is the case. We had planned to make visits, for example, to fish farms, to have a look at those with the C4 project that we're working with. We had planned that. They had to be cancelled, that particular part of that project, which we were going to go and see fish farms with them. We were going to meet, obviously, colleagues in fish advocacy across Europe and elsewhere. All that, of course, had to be cancelled because the travel restrictions have made that impossible. So clearly in the year 2020, our plans were impacted. We therefore have extended the project for a further 12 months to try and have some of those meetings, have some of those visits in the latter part of this year, if the pandemic and the virus allows us to do so. That's obviously out of our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, people are putting a lot of faith in these vaccines that are being produced. And maybe not for this interview, but another time I'd like to chat about vaccine production and how we've suddenly seen not one, not two, but double figures of vaccines being produced in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Normally we tell they take 5 to 10 years. So something's going on there that I'd like to talk about in greater depth maybe later in the year.
Okay.
But we do plan to do that if the vaccine allows. Just one point I would make. I read only this morning that as of last week, in what's called the rich countries, however one defines them, there have been 39 million vaccinations already. 39 million. In Africa, 25 only. So, that just highlights the inequality again of the world. And 39 million people vaccinated in Europe, the US, probably Australia, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by rich countries, but in the whole of Africa, 25 people.
Well, it certainly does, and it's clearly something which we should be concerned about, and which the current Pope has been concerned about with his efforts with the on economic and social areas as well. So I look forward to talking to you about vaccines in the future. But what about the future for what we're doing with the fish project? Because Clara announced at the conference that it will carry on until I believe March 2022. What do we intend to do in that time?
Right. Yes, March 2022 is the new end date, if that's the right expression for the project. That gives the number just over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we want to do is continue some of the work we started last year and expand that as and when the pandemic allows visits. But one of the issues that has come out of this, in particular resonance for us as Catholic Concern for Animals, is the use of fish as a fasting food, a substitute for meat in periods of traditional Christian Catholic fasting. And the two big times a year, obviously, are Lent and Advent. And we did some initial work, Advent just gone, before Christmas, by definition, before Christmas, with colleagues from the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on YouTube, folks, if you want to see that.
It is indeed, yes.
But also we want to do something for Lent, which is very, very close. Lent is coming in a matter of 10 days or so, just over 10 days. So we're hoping to work with colleagues in the United States on Lent, because there's a tradition, strong tradition, like there is in Central Europe, of replacing meat with carp. Don't eat meat for Advent, but you can eat carp. With the US saying don't eat meat during Lent, but you can eat fish. So we're trying to bring the same message, which is quite simple, that meat and fish are the same thing. The fact that it's not a land-based animal like a pig or a cow or a chicken or whatever people generally eat, a fish should be put in the same bracket as those other animal species and not eaten. If you're going to fast, that means don't eat any living creature. And that's the message we want to put out, obviously all the time, but particularly in these Christian Catholic times of Lent and Advent. So that's the next big thing for us, is working on this Lent project.
With respect to the fish project, that's one of the aspects of future work for CCA. But what else do you see CCA doing over the coming year?
Well, it's continuing to educate generally that fish are obviously when I say fish species, there are many types of fish species. Fish are as worthy of respect as any other creature on the planet. And you address this in your contribution to the conference, Fish the Forgotten Species, that, you know, fish are forgotten in many respects because of the reasons you outlined and other people have outlined. And we need to keep that message. That is the fundamental message of the whole project, actually, that fish are worthy of respect and care and consideration and not made to suffer as much as any other animal that we deal with. And it's that suffering is hidden. The suffering is hidden in so many ways, not least of which the way, again, you referred to, fish are not treated as individuals. They're treated as tonnage, you know. So all the message is to educate people as much as we can of the plight of fish and their need to be treated considerately.
I think the fish project has been interesting because it's really kind of highlighted the importance of Laudato Si and the message that the Pope has put in Laudato Si, because what Laudato Si states is that we should regard all of creation as important, and fish are important because of the role they play in marine biology, in our creation as a whole, in our seas and oceans. Not just because we might regard them as feeling pain or sentient. So you've got the whole debates about whether fish are sentient, whether they do feel pain, going on at the moment. But I think the data C actually cuts through that and so we should respect fish because they are part of our creation.
Oh, absolutely. And I was delighted to see in Cardinal Turkson's written message, some comments about this and how the marine environment is absolutely critical, as everything else. And therefore, the key point that you made there is that these creatures are God's creatures, as much as any other creature, and therefore they're worthy of respect on that basis. We, as Catholics, as Christians, don't have to, and I'm not saying this is not important, but we don't have to show their sentience or their feeling of pain. We just have to say these are God's creatures, therefore they are worthy of respect because of that. We don't have to prove these other things. Though, of course, they're helpful in getting people's attention and people's understanding. But the simple fact is they are God's creatures as much as any other species on the planet, and therefore they are worthy of the same respect as any other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the great thing about that is that that's what CCA has been saying from its outset, that you know, we respect creatures, we respect all of creation, and all of creation matters. It doesn't matter whether it's, you know, rats or krill or whatever. It all matters because it all adds up to a whole. And I think one of the things as well, which we kind of perhaps need to address in future work, is the damage that's being done to that environment by our need to obtain fish. And you know, we're getting close now to actually completely changing the marine environment through our activities.
Well, I mean, we have changed the marine environment because of our activities.
Yes, true.
There's no denying we're getting there. We have. And one of the things that has helped bring that to public attention in recent times has been the work of people like David Attenborough, who reaches a big public audience. And one of the things that is occurring there is the issue of plastics in the ocean and the damage that those plastics are doing to the marine environment. Also, and this is where it actually gets down to individuals and their own behavior, there is now increasing evidence if you eat some fish that are caught in some parts of the world, you're probably ingesting plastic yourself via the fish that is ingesting the plastic. And obviously we see horrible visuals of big marine creatures tied up in plastics and all sorts of debris in the ocean. And of course, one of the horrendous byproducts of the commercial fishing industry has been the effects on other creatures, marine creatures. We've long been aware of dolphins and caught in tuna nets, for example.
Yes.
But now we're seeing a decimation of the shark populations for getting caught in nets. So these big marine creatures, dolphins, sharks, being massively decimated by the way we basically try and catch fish, amongst other things, and marine pollution. So there's all sorts of issues, and we need to engage with people like Attenborough are doing, like others are doing, but we need to get that message across as well, that everything that we do has repercussions for the natural environment and the creatures that live in the oceans.
So to sum up, Chris, how do you feel about CCA's activities over the past year and the position CCA's in going forward?
Well, I think CCA, like many organisations, has had a difficult 12 months. I mean, I don't think anybody, well, I think there are some companies who have done very well. Zoom, for example, which we
Amazon.
I think some companies have done all right. Netflix, I believe, have done okay. But for most people, certainly for animal welfare charities, it's been a tough 12 months. And indeed, our patron, Sir David Amis, had a German debate in the United Kingdom Parliament only very recently on about UK government support for animal charities who've not had the support they should have had compared to other sectors of the economy, and therefore the effect on animals. So clearly, as an animal charity, although we don't look after animals directly, we have been affected. But what we've done, we've put a lot of extra resource into the digital delivery, which I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. For example, we launched a new fortnightly digital newsletter at the start of the pandemic. We put our flagship magazine, The Ark, on digital now, which has enhanced that product. We have increased other things. We've launched, like new social media platforms, including this one, the YouTube channel.
Indeed.
We've done a lot of outreach digitally because of the pandemic, because we couldn't get out of our houses and go and visit anyone. So that has been a very new development, and I think a successful one in the last 10 months.
It's certainly changed the shape of CCA, hasn't it, in terms of the way it looks, and actually kind of made CCA, I think, a much more forward-looking organisation in terms of the way in which it engages with modern and contemporary media. Do you see that as being an important part in the coming year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always been the case, and I've again repeatedly said this, so people may not be hearing it for the first time. Catholic Concern for Animals wants to take our message to the whole Catholic community and beyond the Catholic community. We're not limiting ourselves, but clearly to the Catholic community, our main target audience, if that's the right expression. And I keep saying there are 1.4 to 1.5 billion Catholics out there on the planet. The only way we can reach even a fraction of those is by digital means. So, prior to the internet, our ambitions would have been much less than they are now. Now, I don't know, anybody in the world could be watching this from anywhere in the world, if they're allowed to access the internet, which most of the time people are. But we had a case recently where some of our colleagues couldn't actually join the conference because their country shut down the internet for 4 or 5 days. So there are obviously from time to time practical issues, but we can reach potentially everybody who has access to this medium. And when you're talking about the 1.4 billion people, that's a huge number. So clearly our digital output and delivery is a way of reaching people we would never otherwise ever historically have been able to reach.
We talked in the past half hour about the Catholic message and the importance of that. But as you touched on there, CCA actually has quite a few members who aren't Catholic, who are from different faiths or no faith at all. What do you think CCA offers people who are not Catholics in terms of being involved in animal advocacy?
Well, firstly, I take it as a great compliment to the charity that we have people of who are not Catholic, who are with faiths or no faith. So we must be doing something right if they want to work with us. So that's quite an endorsement, which I'm very proud of. They've actually joined us because of the work we're doing and supported. So clearly, we must be doing something right to attract people to join and become supporters along those lines. But of course, going back to Laudato Si, as we've said before, that groundbreaking encyclical was written to everybody on the planet. Pope Francis deliberately said, this is not only to the Catholic community. He addressed the whole encyclical to everybody who wanted to read it and take notice of it. And that's the approach that we're taking. So anybody who wants to support animal advocacy is welcome to support and work with us. And hopefully we will bring something to the table which other organizations don't. And I believe that is our role. And I refer you back again to the fact that people who attended the conference a couple of weeks ago normally wouldn't have the opportunity to
Yes.
speak and question senior Vatican representatives.
Yeah, indeed. Right, Chris. Well, just to wind up, is there anything else that you wish to say about CCA and its future?
Well, yes. I mean, we've talked a lot about the fish project, obviously, which is absolutely correct, because that's our big central project for the year. We've talked about the digital transformation that took place last year, in part in response to the pandemic, but we were also doing that anyway. We were increasing our digital reach. It just accelerated many of the plans we had, actually. But the year is very big as well, because we've got COP26 in November.
Indeed.
And firstly, I'm delighted that the United States are back involved, supporting the Paris Agreement. It's a great worry not to have the US involved in such an, crucially international agreement. So that's a big positive start to the year, that the US are back and will no doubt be very active. I think the Americans tend to be active in such areas when they're involved. So that's very good. And CCA wants to be involved in that to bring the animal perspective. A lot of the climate change discussions, quite rightly, discuss things like energy consumption, energy production, reducing energy consumption, but animals don't often get a look in. It's our job to bring it with our other animal advocacy colleagues, bring that to the table. So we'll be trying to do that over the coming 9 months, 10 months before the actual event in Glasgow in November. We'll hopefully might even be there in person. We're talking with the United Nations Climate Change Committee, who run it, as if we see if we can be there in person. We're also, as you know, part of the United Nations Environment Programme, another arm of the UN, I can put it that way. And they've got the United Nations Environment Assembly next month, and we're definitely participating in that. So there are these big international events, and COP26, which will be very, very important. Onto that, we want to work with our existing colleagues and partners, Eurogroup for Animals, Asia for Animals, the Humane Society of the United States, for example, FIAPO in India. There's so many things that need to be addressed in the way that we deal with animals, in all sorts of ways, that that there is so much work to be done.
as you mentioned, there's the massive COP meeting up in Glasgow, and absolutely, it's great to see America back and engaged with the world again. And I hope that's actually going to bring some fruitful results. But we are seeing a lot of squabbling, a lot of tension between countries like the USA and China, for example, between Britain and the European Union, and in Russia and other places around the world. How much does that affect the ability of animal advocacy groups to make a difference, and how does it affect the world of animals?
Well, clearly, I mean, I think there's always been tensions between nation states. I don't think that's a new phenomenon of our time. I think that's always been the case, and there's not a lot I could do about that. So I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it. I can't really affect the US relationship with China or the Russian relationship with whoever or whatever it is. I mean, they will go on their merry way, but clearly they do affect everybody, animals and ourselves in ways that are profound and often difficult to foresee. I was actually, just as you mentioned it, attending something this morning again, and I was showed a digital what's the word I'm looking for, a map of Korea from the sky, taken by a satellite map of Korea.
Mm-hmm.
Below the demarcation line, South Korea, this is obviously taken at night, was completely lit up like a Christmas tree, and North Korea was empty of anything apart from a few spots. So there's an example of global politics that's been going on for 70 years, the division of Korea, and that effect immediately on light pollution, and
Mm-hmm.
so massive effects there, I imagine, on the animals that live in the Korean Peninsula, or south.
Yeah.
I mean, and we hear now that going back to the fish, if you swim into British waters, you're a happy fish now. All such things. So all these relations are beyond our control, but clearly they do have an effect. I'm not quite sure if fish do get any happy when they suddenly cross a little bit of space into water into British.
I think it probably matters whether they caught up in a flipping net or not, and irrespective of
their happiness, whether they're in a net rather than anyway. I mean, we digress. So yeah, clearly, all these things affect everything. We just have to continue working with our objectives, with what we believe is the correct way to help animals, with our partners, with nation states. I mean, we have colleagues in Russia, for example. We have colleagues in other parts of the world, India, China. These people are working in sometimes very difficult environments, but they're working hard and trying to improve animal lives in the area where they live. So wherever there is, CCA is a global organization. We will work everywhere and anywhere to try and improve animals' lives, despite the squabbles, as you called it, of our nation states.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much for that, Chris. I think we wind it up there, and thank you for your time and your discussion of CCA and where we're going in the future. And we'll see you all in another vlog in the very near future. Goodbye.
Thank you.